We have a city to burn.
It is true that there's a lot of excellent games coming out this year. By the time 2020 is over, we'll have so many fantastic modern experiences to choose from that we probably won't even get to all of them. However, one of 2020's giant games that stand to subtract dozens upon dozens of hours out of our lives, the most, is Cyberpunk 2077. The game has been slowly but surely generating a lot of interest over the last several years since its initial announcement, and now, as hype for the game begins to hit its peak, we see that Cyberpunk 2077 will likely be one of this year's biggest games, if not the biggest, for a multitude of reasons. One of the most widely known aspects of Cyberpunk 2077's experience is the unparalleled freedom the game will feature. From augments to the player's body, a detailed skill development suite to all the other side quests, collectibles, and exploration opportunities that have become a standard in open-world games, it seems like the game is certainly shaping up to be one of the biggest games of all time. The customization of your character alone will be something to marvel at, as few games have gone to lengths as great as CD Projekt Red seems to be in order to facilitate the end user being able to make exactly what they want out of their characters. All the way down to hairstyle, voice tone, and clothing will be customizable. On top of that, as you play, a wide range of skills will develop to better enhance your playstyle. Everything from certain perks that are attached to the class you use, to abilities associated with various aspects of combat and traversal. Your ability to use melee, blades, handguns, shotguns, rifles, sniper rifles, hacking of various devices, two-handed combat, assassination, cold blood, engineering, and athletics will all be variables that change and advance the more you use them. With so many variables at play always being added to or subtracted from depending on your input, it's fair to say that after a few months we'll see interesting character types emerge that the developers likely didn't even think of. This will instill a truly unparalleled sense of freedom and control for the player that will likely serve as a benchmark for the RPG genre for many years to come. And it'll be a hard one to overcome no matter how far game freedom progresses in the coming years. While gameplay and role-playing freedom will likely provide lots of intrigue and addicting fun, it wouldn't mean much if the setting was boring. Thankfully, Cyberpunk 2077 won't be having that problem. The game is set in the future, but not so far in the future that the ideas within it seem silly. Everything in Cyberpunk, while obviously fictional, does seem to be a possibility one day, likely within most of our lifetimes. In fact, many of the core tenets of the world in Cyberpunk already exist. Animatronic limbs, visual implants, an internet marketplace flooded with corporate influences, and several forms of advanced AI that we depend on to maintain societal norms are already commonplace right now in 2020, and show no signs of slowing down, much less reversing. The truth is, we are likely headed into a world that somewhat resembles the one in the game in many ways. Whether we end up with any one specific gadget or service, only time will tell, but certainly the human drive for more control over their bodies, their abilities, and their identities exists. And the fact that we can draw a straight logical line from our current world to this one will make Cyberpunk 2077 feel all the more real and engaging to players in subtle and obvious ways. Another key aspect of the game that we mustn't forget is where it lies in the lineage of CD Projekt's repertoire. While the company has certainly shown it knows its way around making great games for many years now, an important thing to note about their history is that it is almost entirely made up of Witcher games. Now, there's certainly nothing wrong with that on its face, as those are outstanding games, but as we often see with developers who spend years upon years working on the same franchise, they tend to eventually hunger for something new and different. After making cartoony platformers for a decade, Naughty Dog eventually outgrew that motif and moved on to Uncharted, then from that to The Last of Us. Similarly, Sony's Guerrilla eventually had to stretch their legs with Horizon. All of these transitions turned out great because of the artistic nature of game developers. Very rarely do you see a developer stick to one thing for their entire existence and enjoy it. Even Santa Monica, who did end up making yet another outstanding God of War game, at least tried to branch out into a totally new genre with their infamous defunct futuristic space age game, an idea that I doubt we've seen the last of. As such, CD Projekt Red has done almost nothing else but work in the same Witcher universe. Surely the creative release of moving on into a new world, new setting, and totally different style is something that cannot be measured. As such, we are going to see a very talented group of developers, programmers, and artists express themselves in this explosion of creativity with purpose and drive. This should be music to the ears of everyone involved in its creation, as well as anybody who might be interested in giving the game a shot, but might still be looking for a little more perspective on why. Speaking of perspective, of all the things that will differ between Cyberpunk 2077 and The Witcher, the first-person perspective will surely be one of the most fundamental. Sure, it's still an RPG and won't be reinventing the wheel by simply changing the angle, but at the same time, there is something special about changing from an over-the-shoulder or top-down perspective to one that matches the eyesight of the character. It can easily make things more visceral and intimate. Looking right into the faces of friends and enemies alike as you interact with them will make these moments stand out in a way that perhaps a third-person game would have a harder time with. It will also make the combat itself obviously more engaging, as this time around, CD Projekt Red is putting a big focus on gunplay, which does complement the first-person viewpoint more than any other perspective most of the time. That said, the customizations that you do spend so much time on will not be visible in a first-person view, but surely as cutscenes take place and the game's many futuristic reflective surfaces do pop up, there will be countless ways to appreciate the work you've done to make the character your own. Cyberpunk 2077 is not going to be the year's biggest game by simply being another RPG set in an interesting environment. That would certainly be enough to make it a good or even great game. But that's clearly not all Cyberpunk has up its sleeves. The game's sense of style, control, and freedom are going to be what sets it apart from its contemporaries. While many of the aspects of Cyberpunk 2077 might already exist in one form or another, in games like Deus Ex Mankind Divided or Grand Theft Auto, no game before now will encompass them all in such a coherent way to bring such a compelling environment, rich setting, and freedom-oriented gameplay to us. For those reasons, and countless others, if somehow you haven't already gotten the memo, Cyberpunk 2077 is not to be missed by anyone who values great games. That's it for this video. If you enjoyed and would like to see more, feel free to hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell to ensure you'll be notified when new videos go up.